Hey folks, let's talk about crime scene staging in the Chad Daybell Doomsday murder case. Staging refers to that alteration of physical evidence at a crime scene in an effort to throw off investigators. It worked for a short time, but staging and bad acting are coming back to bite the Doomsday Daybells. Hey, welcome to Profiling Evil, and thanks so much for tuning in. I hope you'll take just a quick minute, hit that like and subscribe button, and make sure you're sharing us with your friends. Please turn on those notifications so that you get releases on all of our videos when they come out. Now, crime scene staging is what we're talking about today as the Chad Daybell murder trial continues in Idaho. Crime scene staging is often a sophisticated and deliberate attempt by these predators to mislead investigators, to divert suspicion, and to manipulate the narrative surrounding a crime. In the Daybell case in particular, I'm left believing that staging occurred, but it certainly wasn't sophisticated. And all the disorganization going on in that batch of cohorts is showing through in this trial. Now, it came out in Lori's trial, but I think we're seeing it on full tilt. You know, one of the upsides to a staged crime scene is that they often are accompanied by subtle oversights, mistakes made by the predators who commit these crimes, and they devise these fake events. In this particular case, it's showing its way with things like the credit card purchases, burner phones, mobile phone location forensics, and all of the other physical and forensic evidence that's coming forward, including all the admissions and the eyewitness accounts. All of these are showing where a bad lie is exposed by forensics and the collaboration or corroboration of the other forms of evidence. Now, I spoke about this on Court TV last night, and I wanted to share my thoughts about these two topics. So let's watch this.
Mike, there's a lot here, right? And initially, the search, everyone was wondering, did something happen at Yellowstone? Doesn't seem that way. Seems like it happened at Lori's house. And the GPS data that they were putting together, everything that they were doing, put Alex Cox at Lori's that night, and then the following morning goes to that backyard where Tylee ended up being found.
Exactly, Vinny. And I think the thing that's so interesting, we have to keep reminding ourselves, is that when you're trying to figure out location, and this expert is doing a great job of trying to get this point across, I think the defense is doing a great job of trying to muddy the waters, but it's a certainty range. It's a guesstimate in range that says, hey, based on cell towers, GPS off of the device, Wi-Fi or Bluetooth low energy, that that signal is going to be stronger or weaker, and that's going to show that certainty range. But it's saying that with certainty, that person is inside of this radius. And it's really hard for him to get past the fact that people keep getting in the right radius at the right time. And I thought something incredible came out today that I don't know that the prosecution made as much headway with as they could have, but I don't know if you caught that part, Vinny, where they talked about Cox's phone being left at his apartment, but then he picked up this burner phone that happened to make 10 phone calls to Chad Daybell's phone on the day of this murder. That to me is like the biggest moment of the day. I just started jumping up and down in my seat.
Oh, absolutely. I still haven't seen any case where there's an innocent use of a burner phone.
You know, the decision to kill a spouse rather than just seek divorce is complex and multifaceted. I mean, how many of you are just thinking, why didn't they walk away? Well, it's often rooted in a combination of psychological, emotional, and situational factors. And while every case is unique, some of these more common motivations include things like intense emotion being involved. In cases of extreme anger and jealousy or betrayal, individuals may resort to violence as a way to express themselves and cope with these overwhelming emotions that they're feeling. These intense feelings often cloud judgment, and they lead to these bizarre or irrational behaviors, this impulsiveness that we're seeing. And we're seeing pieces of that come out in the Chad Daybell murder trial, including acts of violence. In this case, not only the children, but acts of violence against Tammy Daybell, Chad Daybell's spouse. It's hard to imagine the intense emotion that Chad Daybell must have been feeling as you watch this guy in court. I mean, he is as bland as they get. But think about those childish and steamy emails that he and Lori Vallow were shooting back and forth prior to her becoming Lori Daybell. The fantasy that these two were experiencing is like watching junior high kids, in my opinion. They're experimenting with their emotions and their secret desires. They have little code words. I mean, if you've been listening today, this talk about blueprints, come on. Now, Lori provided the intense emotion in their relationships. And perhaps this is something that Chad Daybell had never before experienced. And if we learned anything in the Lori Daybell trial, it was that Lori understood that her husband Charles was worth more to her dead than alive. She also understood how to use talents that she had, and she used those to get Chad Daybell to do her will. He used his talents to get her to believe and do his will. Now, Lori Daybell understood that keeping JJ and Tylee's Social Security benefits were more valuable if those kids were dead and not being an expenditure. She also knew that by killing Charles Vallow, there was a bucket of money to come. She didn't know that that money was pushed somewhere else. But by getting rid of all of them, their financial situation would improve. Now, on the flip side, Tammy Daybell was labeled dark. And because Chad was this self-proclaimed prophet who announced that dark spirits die, Tammy died. But he benefited financially to the tune of nearly $500,000. Tammy Daybell simply provided a money stream to allegedly support Daybell's lustful pursuits with his co-conspirator, Lori Daybell. In many cases, perpetrators of spousal homicide might seek out a way to exert their control and dominance over their partners, including murder, as a way of maintaining their power and authority within the relationship. I just don't think this is the case in Tammy's murder. I don't think it was about power and control or frustration in that way. Tammy's murder was motivated by a need for a fresh start, a pathway that in Chad Daybell's mind was easier than ridding himself of their union, going through a divorce where he might lose half of his income, might lose access to his kids. Killing Tammy and having that additional reward of huge financial life insurance benefits was really motivating. And it appeared to fit with the overall fantasy of having some money to fuel his new affairs. Some individuals fear the consequence of divorce, including the financial loss that comes with it, maybe the social stigma, or the prospect of losing custody of their children. I don't think that's the case in the Daybell case again, other than the financial loss. Rather than face these challenges, many times people that become killers and kill their spouse will choose to eliminate the source of their anxiety by getting rid of the spouse. Again, I don't think Chad Daybell cared about keeping his children close by. I don't think he cared about going through a divorce or any social impact that might have. In fact, information that's come out in trial says his children weren't labeled dark. Only Lori Vallow's children were labeled dark. And that was because there was a financial benefit attached to them. Tammy's death opened the way for a huge life insurance settlement. In other words, Tammy, JJ, Tylee, when gone, would be the reason why there was a new money stream: life insurance and Social Security benefits. In some cases, the motivation for crime scene staging is that the perpetrator might perceive that their spouse is, a threat to their well-being, their reputation, or their livelihood. And again, I think Tammy Daybell was carrying Chad Daybell. I don't think it's the case in any stretch of the imagination, but there may have been some paranoia, some delusional thinking, I think is pretty evident, and there really are some distorted perceptions of reality. But again, I haven't seen anything to support this notion in why Chad Daybell may have killed Tammy Daybell. And again, keep in mind that he's innocent at this particular stage. Lori, on the other hand, is not. She's guilty of killing Tammy. Now, I haven't seen anything that suggests that Tammy Daybell was going to divorce Chad Daybell. He's the one who had all these zealous religious ideas. Chad Daybell, not Tammy, is the one who suddenly uprooted his family and moved from Utah up to Idaho because he thought there was going to be an apocalypse coming. It was Chad Daybell, not Tammy Daybell, that had these delusions and visions. It was Chad Daybell, not Tammy Daybell, who taught end-of-world concepts. And of course, it was Chad Daybell who was pursuing an adulterous relationship with Lori Vallow. It's important to recognize that these motivations are complex, and they might interact with each other in really unique ways. Additionally, factors such as mental illness, substance abuse, which there's no evidence of, or prior history of violence, which I don't know that there's a history of on Chad's side of the fence, or access to weapons can further contribute to these decisions to kill a spouse. But you know that in Tammy's case, Alex Cox was at the gun range preparing for that day in which he tried to take her life, but the gun misfired. Now, crime scene staging is simply put a deliberate alteration of physical evidence at a crime scene in an effort to simulate events that did not occur. The intent is clear. It's to mislead investigators in hopes that they'll believe a story created by these predators. In the case of Tammy Daybell's death, it appears to me that the murder was planned and the reporting was staged. Now let's listen again to that 911 call on the morning that Tammy Daybell was reported as deceased.
I'm Chad, the husband. She's clearly dead. We don't know.
Sorry. Okay, Chad, I'm going to get somebody up to you right now, okay?
You have a corner where the blinking yellow light is with the red house?
Yes, sir. Red house on the corner.
Yes.
Blinking yellow light.
Right.
Okay. We'll get somebody out to you, okay? I'm so sorry.
Okay.
If you need anything else, you call me back, okay?
Okay.
Okay, bye-bye.
When you arrived, Chad Daybell was distraught, wasn't he?
Yes.
Sobbing.
Yes.
And you noted that it was his son that was not upset. His son was, and I don't want to put words in your mouth, but would you say his son was reserved?
Yes.
Quiet.
Yes.
And in the FBI report, you mentioned that you think that maybe his son was in shock. Remember that?
Yes.
Okay. And it's still your assessment at this point that at the time you felt that his son Garth was in shock. Is that right?
Yes.
Please tell the jury how that call went. What did you first say and how did Chad respond?
So just expressing my sympathy and shock that Tammy had passed away, and asked him what had happened, if he could explain to me what had happened. But the whole time he was explaining that, it felt scripted to me, he was reading it or something. It just felt very scripted. It was the word that came to my mind, and it made me feel very uneasy.
Staging becomes the beginnings of a chess match between a coroner and the predator, between the investigators and the predator. And we've seen how that coroner performed. In Tammy Daybell's case, The coroner's inexperience almost cost this entire case. Thankfully, there were so many other glaring problems with the companion cases that Rexburg police continued to forge forward and probe this case more deeply, leading to these arrests. So as we think about staging, we need to keep in mind that it can involve various elements, not only things like changing the position of objects in the room, but maybe even manipulating the body or creating a false narrative through the evidence that's at the scene. Detecting staged crime scenes requires careful analysis and careful attention to detail, something that would deviate from the typical pattern of a genuine crime scene. And this is really important to keep in mind. And this is where experience really pays off and why you have the best of your team working on these major cases like this. Experienced investigators will look for inconsistencies and unusual arrangements or signs of manipulation to identify that there's been staging at a crime scene. For instance, stating that Tammy Daybell suddenly tumbled out of bed. Again, keep in mind he said when he touched her she was cold and stiff. That is staging. It's not possible for that body to roll out of bed. It would have to be forced out of bed. And he said that that's the sound that awakened him. That really bothered me from day one and was the first major indicator that this crime scene was being staged. Now, hey folks, I want to pause from our discussion on staging and the Chad Daybell murder case for just a moment to remind you about CrimeCon, and it's happening in Nashville, Tennessee at the end of the month of May. In fact, it's May 30th through June 2nd. And I hope if you're going to go there that you'll use this code, Profiling Evil, to get a discount as you put in your registration. And if you come to CrimeCon, make sure you stop by my booth or stop by the 2 presentations that I'm going to be doing and make sure that we get a chance to say hello. We'll take some pictures, we'll socialize it, and we'll have a good time. Now, I'm going to be presenting in 2 different venues at CrimeCon. Number 1, I'm going to be talking with Sarah Edmondson and her husband who escaped the NXIVM cult. And we're going to be talking about cult behaviors. And then later, I'm going to be talking about ethics in true crime investigations, something that talks more about getting help to people than getting subscribers. I hope you'll join me for both of those. And thanks again for your support of Profiling Evil. Now, let's get back to today's discussion on staging crime scenes. And we're using the Chad Daybell murder case as the background for this discussion. Being staged. Now, it appeared to me that the Doomsday couple, along with their henchmen, manipulated various crime scenes in attempts to mislead investigators in several different states and several different criminal cases. Their desire was to divert suspicion or obscure the nature of the case. Staging in the Daybell case, including Charles Vallow's murder and Brandon Beddoes' attempted murder case, involved rearranging of physical evidence. It involves fabricating false narratives and creating timelines or alibis that somehow suggest people aren't involved. It also involves employing props or decoys to enhance the deception that's going on there. Carefully analyzing these crime scenes and the behaviors can provide valuable insight into the psychology of the predator. What's motivating this crime? What's making them want to do it and do it in the way in which they're doing? It might lead to understanding not only the motivation, but why certain people are selected and victimized. When staging is recognized, the investigation gets enhancements. It requires a really keen eye, though, for detail. It requires critical thinking, and it requires forensics, physical evidence, eyewitness accounts, confessions or admissions. It requires all the forms of evidence to disprove a staged crime scene, but it's often easier than we might think. So as you continue to look at the Daybell case and consider what is staged and what might have happened naturally, keep these simple indicators in mind. Number 1, Did the crime scene seem too perfect? Think about who reported Charles Vallow's death. If you remember, it was Alex Cox, the victim. And luckily, as luck might have it, Lori Daybell and her children were at a fast food restaurant and buying flip-flops at the time of the murder. It was the perfect alibi for them. But does that mean they're free of the responsibility of the crime? Think about Tammy Daybell again, who rolled out of bed somehow miraculously as this body going through rigor mortis. People who stage crime scenes are often the same person who discovers the crime, or in this case, discovers the body. In some cases, they're the one who suggests that a family member go into an area that hasn't been checked and check on someone. It happens to be there that they find the body and they release the information, and it appears that they found him. I mean, in essence, the predator throws a loved one under the bus to discover the body. When considering crime scene evidence, ask yourself about weapons, where they're discovered. Why did they end up in a perfect location other than where the forensic evidence might suggest they should be? Like in a self-inflicted gunshot wound, a gun still in the hand versus dropped on the floor and bounced away somewhere. Think about crime scenes that just happen to have all the right pieces and parts, and all of it happens to be in the right places. And think about who's going to gain something when somebody else dies. You know, it's not always about money, but the killer might have something that they really want to gain through all of this. Now, I believe in this particular case, it was about passion and money. And I think power to show that Chad Daybell is a prophet. In summary, understanding staging in criminal investigations is absolutely essential in upholding justice, in preventing future crime, in enhancing investigative techniques, and building stronger cases based on factual evidence. As law enforcement and you as true crime enthusiasts unravel the complexities of these staged crime scenes, the investigators end up playing this crucial role in ensuring the integrity of the criminal justice system. They safeguard the rights of both the victims and the suspects. Now, I'd like to know your thoughts on this one, folks, and I hope you'll put your comments down below. And while you're doing that, I hope you'll consider making a $20 donation to Profiling Evil through the link that's on the screen or in the description box down below. As a thank you for your donation, I'm going to send you a couple of fun little items. I'm going to be giving these away at CrimeCon. So if you live in the United States, I'm going to ship this to you for free. With your $20 donation, I'm going to send you 4 cork Profiling Evil drink coasters. I'm going to send you 4 Profiling Evil stickers and a Profiling Evil pen. So thanks so much for donating toward our efforts. It really does help us in paying the bills on all of the stuff that's needed to run a YouTube channel. You might also be interested in knowing that we donate the proceeds that we get to other kinds of important events, like burying victims of crimes, or paying for law enforcement training, or the new Children's Justice Center. You can find Profiling Evil on Facebook, Instagram, YouTube, and Twitter. And if you like audio podcasts, make sure that you're checking out Profiling Evil podcasts on your favorite podcast platform. So thanks again for your support, folks, and we'll see you all soon at the next crime scene.